Today is day 7 of my 30-day video game review challenge. Today's theme, your favorite handheld video game. This particular game, I have a long history with. I love this game even to this day, and it's The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. We're going to check it out and talk about why it's so special and why it's my favorite handheld system. Guys, if you haven't subscribed to me, please do so. I'm giving away a Super Nintendo Classic Edition, and all you have to do is subscribe to me. Alright guys, let's get right into the review. Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening was released in 1993 by the same team who developed A Link to the Past. So you know, right now, I am going to love this game. Nintendo wanted to do a direct port of A Link to the Past on the Game Boy. The team got together and they started talking, and they were inspired by a few ideas. Twin Peaks, that was a very popular TV show in the 90s. And they wanted to do something similar to that TV series with The Legend of Zelda. This is one of the few Zelda games that has nothing to do with the Triforce, Ganon, or Zelda herself. So it's kind of a unique game, and fans all over the world love this game. And of course, we do have to mention the Nintendo Switch remake that came out in 2019. And it was very surprising to me that Nintendo made a remake of this beloved handheld classic game. I am not going to review the Nintendo Switch remake or even the 1998 DX edition. That was actually my first experience with this game in 1998. We're going to look at the original masterpiece and what makes it so good. A little background about the story. Link has been shipwrecked on the mysterious island Koholint Island. He's trying to get back to Hyrule. In order to get back home, Link has to awaken the ancient windfish. He has to find instruments hidden inside dungeons to wake him up. Once he wakes up the windfish, he can go back home. If you're not familiar with any of the Legend of Zelda games, it's an action-adventure game. It's not an RPG, but Link can upgrade his weapons and his hearts throughout his journey. Link will also find various tools and other weapons in his adventure to progress through the game. My personal favorite is the feather. Link can jump in this game. I know he can jump in later 3D versions, but this is the first time Link can jump in a Zelda game. It's amazing, right? There are 8 different dungeons, and they're going to offer you a lot of challenge, a ton of enemies to defeat, a lot of treasures to find. You can also find new items to help you out on your quest, and there are a lot of puzzles. Some are more difficult than others, some are easier to figure out than others, but you're going to enjoy trying to figure those puzzles out in the dungeons. Now, each dungeon has a mini boss and also a main boss. Usually, in order to defeat the main boss, you have to find your recently acquired item from that dungeon. Rinse and repeat, find the pattern, and you'll beat that particular boss. Once you beat the boss, you'll get that particular instrument from that dungeon and keep moving on in the game. One more unique quality about the dungeons that you'll see from time to time are these 2D side-scrolling bits. I have a ton of fun going through those portions of the dungeons. It's very similar to a Mario game. Now, as far as adding this game to your collection, I recommend that you add all 3 versions of this game. You have the original version, which is going for $25 loose, the DX version, which is going for $30 loose. The big differences between the DX version and the original version, there's actually a color palette swap for the DX version. There's also an extra dungeon, and if you have a Game Boy printer hanging around, you can use the Game Boy printer. Now, if you're looking for something a little bit more modern, of course, I suggest that you play the Nintendo Switch Remake. Now, that's going for $60 retail. It's still a newer game, so expect to pay full retail price for that Switch title. Let's take a critical look at A Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening on the Game Boy, the pros and the cons. Pro number 1, the gameplay and the dungeons. You're going to have so much fun exploring these dungeons, finding treasures, using new items, and the puzzles. The puzzles are awesome. They're going to challenge you a little bit, and I don't recommend using a strategy guide. Try to figure these puzzles out on your own. Trial and error, and the puzzles reset if you leave the room, if you mess up. So there's no fear of messing up. I know I brought up the 2D portions of the dungeons earlier, but I gotta say, I love those parts of the dungeons. I look forward to them. Usually, there's gonna be some enemies from the Mario Brothers series, and that to me is just a cool nod to one of Nintendo's favorite franchises. Pro number 2, the items, the inventory. I absolutely love items in any Zelda game, really. That's kind of the crux of the gameplay. That's the crux of a Legend of Zelda game, is finding new weapons and new items to progress through the game. And I gotta say that these items are just as good or on par with A Link to the Past. You're gonna have a lot of fun using these against bosses and common enemies. My favorites, the hook shot, the feather, of course, the bow and arrow, and then the ocarina. Pro number 3, the boss fights. They're so good and so fun to try to figure out how to beat them. I said this earlier, but you usually have to use the recently acquired item to defeat them. My all-time favorite boss, besides the last boss, I like fighting the last boss. I'm not going to spoil anything. I love fighting Evil Eagle. That's in Eagle's Tower. For some reason, I had a lot of difficulty with that particular boss, and it was very challenging, and I like challenging boss fights. What's your favorite boss fight in Link's Awakening? I also thoroughly enjoy the mini bosses. They're usually midway through a dungeon, and you're going to have a lot of fun fighting them as well. I really don't have any cons for this game, believe it or not. I think it's a masterpiece, considering that it came out in 1993 on the Game Boy, for crying out loud. Now, I will say that the graphics, if you're playing the original, They are dated. Now, if that's your problem with this particular game, just play the remastered version on the Nintendo Switch. If you're curious about the past of the Zelda franchise, I highly recommend that you play the original version, especially if you played the remastered version on the Nintendo Switch. I also recommend that you track down an original working Game Boy to play this on to get the authentic retro feel. Now, I know that you could play this particular game a lot of different ways. The Super Game Boy, you can play it on the Game Boy Color, the Game Boy Advance, also the Game Boy Player on the Nintendo GameCube. But really, if you want that authentic feel, get yourself a Game Boy and see what it was like in 1993 playing this classic Zelda title. One last thing I'll say about Link's Awakening, I don't give number values to my reviews, but if it's a perfect game, it's a perfect game. This would be a 10 out of 10 if I were to do some sort of number value rating. I'm going to be cheating a little bit on this section. I'm going to combine my daily theme with this particular section. Is Link's Awakening worth playing? And then also, why is it my favorite handheld game of all time? To me, they're synonymous and they go hand in hand. See what I did there? Favorite handheld game of all time? What makes Zelda so popular even to this day? Breath of the Wild and a Breath of the Wild 2 sequel. I'm gonna be honest, it is the exploration, the gameplay, and the sense of adventure. I love playing any Zelda game. It doesn't matter if it's Zelda 1 on the NES or Breath of the Wild on the Switch. It just captures my imagination, and I want to explore that entire world, that entire map. And this game is no exception. I love exploring the entire world map, finding secrets, finding all the heart pieces. I love going into the dungeons, solving the puzzles, and exploring the dungeons. It's so much fun. That's what makes Zelda so special. And there are a lot of games out there that have tried to replicate and copy Zelda's success over the years. And Zelda is a special franchise that will be around for many, many years to come. Nintendo is going to rely on Zelda, the popularity of Zelda, to sell consoles and games, and trust me, they will. So why is Link's Awakening my favorite handheld game of all time? This is one of my very first handheld games ever. I did have a Game Gear before I had a Game Boy Color, but this is the first game I could not put down. Yes, I played Sonic 2 on the Game Gear. I played Mortal Kombat 2 on the Game Gear. Those were my only Game Gear games at the time. But this game, when the Game Boy Color came out, I demanded that I get a Game Boy Color and the DX version. I got it for Christmas that year, and I was super stoked, super excited to be playing Zelda on the go. I actually have memories of taking this to family functions, playing it there, taking it out to eat with my family, of all things. It was kind of a strange thing. You'd be playing your Game Boy, out in public when people are eating. And I also have vivid memories of playing this game in the park. My parents would say, go outside and play. Well, I did that. I was obsessed with this game. I love this game. And it was my first Zelda game that I ever beat. So that's another reason why it's so special to me. And I love this game. And when Nintendo announced that remake, oh man, I was pumped up. And I played it since day one. I recommend the Switch version and this particular version as well. What is your all-time favorite handheld video game? Let me know down in the comments below. What was your first Zelda game? What's the first Zelda game you remember beating? there's my review of Link's Awakening on the Game Boy, the immortal classic. There's a reason why Nintendo remade this game on the Nintendo Switch. It's that good. What's your favorite handheld game of all time? Let me know in the comments below. Another quick reminder, subscribe to my channel. Gonna put you in the running for a Super Nintendo Classic Edition I'm gonna be giving away in July. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.